Hi everybody, welcome back to our LA School Voice updates and Facebook Live sessions. It's been a while since we had one of these, but it's a great topic that we'll be discussing today. My name is Gloria Martinez. I'm your Vice President of Elementary Schools. I'm also a special education teacher from Rowan Avenue Elementary. Hello, Rowan, East area. For the last few months since our win in January, I've been leading on the issue of special education, and I'm super excited to have this on my plate and really just move us, our district and our union, and on behalf of our members, such an important civil rights issue. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be discussing inclusion because we've been bargaining on this issue. So I want to give you guys a little bit of context about inclusion, but then also give you a bargaining update around this issue. And I should note that inclusion, when we are discussing inclusion in this conversation, we are specifically discussing 81 school sites. You would probably know if you are an inclusion site. And so there's 81 schools that are implementing or piloting the inclusion model or more inclusive practices at their school site. So today we're going to be having a discussion with some practitioners. I want to give you guys an update on bargaining, and then we're going to talk a little bit about next steps, right? Because if there's anything that we've learned from our organizing and our strike victories in January, it's that having our next steps and collective action is really what builds momentum and power. And special ed issues are so important to so many of our students that and it connects with our families that we serve on such a broad spectrum that I think we have a real opportunity to lead. So today we're going to be interviewing two folks that are joining us, and so we're going to discuss with them a little bit more, but I just want to talk to you guys about what is inclusion, right? So inclusion is educating children with a disability in the general education setting. And again, for the purposes of this discussion and for the purpose of the bargaining that we're doing, this is not to be confused with mainstreaming, which is what typically a lot of us in special ed have done over the last few years. Again, this targets 81 school sites that are doing this at a much broader level. And so knowing that difference, we want to talk about why is inclusion so important during this time, right? And then talk about the bargaining. So really quickly, we've been bargaining with the district since the end of summer on this issue, and we actually began these discussions back in the springtime. And we have a proposal that is online, UTLA.net. We have our proposal on the inclusion issue. So feel free to look those over if you have any more questions. But I did want to kind of share with you guys that we have some pillars that we're really holding strong on. One is making sure that there is professional development around inclusion for the entire school community. We know that the more stakeholder involvement there is, that the more the inclusion practice is more likely to succeed, and that's exactly what we want. We want to make sure that the district allows that we prioritize planning time between the co-teachers and the teachers that are participating in more inclusive practices. School-wide collaboration, because we know that this is a change in culture, right, when it comes to interacting with students with disabilities, and it's a much necessary change, but we're very excited to lead on. But we also know that people need some resources and to be able to have discussions as a school, as grade levels, as departments. So that's really important for us as well. And then, of course, the district should be supporting a process that is inclusive, just like the other conversion models. So when a school is interested in converting to a magnet school, there is a year-long process. When a school is interested in converting to a dual language program, there is time and practices that are in place so that they can help elevate, plan out, and make sure that that plan succeeds. Also, we know class size and caseload is important, so this is another one. It's the fifth pillar that we're holding really strong on. And then, of course, I mentioned this earlier, but a true process for stakeholder involvement, because this doesn't just affect our members, it affects our students and our parents as well, right? So why inclusion, right? This is a time where we won some great victories in January. Article 22 in special ed. If you haven't seen it, it's on our website. This is the guide to our special education victories. It explains the language that we won, and just like what it means and how enforcement looks like at your school site. So if you're a special education teacher, if you're a parent, if you're a general education teacher or a chapter chair that wants to have a deeper conversation on this, please go on our website, and it's under area meeting documents, because it was handed out there. Inclusion and special ed is a civil rights issue. And I hate to say this, but the district is decades behind in the implementation of inclusive practices for our students. And, we really want to change, like I said, that culture shift, because what we want to do is we want to desegregate our minds and eventually desegregate our students, because it's long overdue. And by desegregating our minds, it really means embodying and embracing a message that general ed students are special ed students are general ed students, your students are my students are your students. And that's really the ultimate goal of inclusion if done right. Over the few months that I've been meeting with folks who are participating in the pilot program, a lot of our members say, like, maybe at first I was hesitant on inclusion, right? But now I see how necessary it is and why it's so important and how right it is, right? What they are most upset about is the implementation, the district rollout of this, right? The district for the last 2.5, going on 3 years, has been pushing for more inclusive practices at 50 schools and now at 81 schools, without any real parameters or guidelines on what the expectations are around co-teaching, what the expectations are around class size, what it means for a general ed teacher to participate actively in the IEP process. So this is all stuff that we're making an argument for at the bargaining table. We have an awesome bargaining team with lots of special ed experience that has come around for this particular issue that I'm really proud of. And what this means, we just to let you know, this was supposed to launch today, because today was supposed to be our 4th bargaining session with the district. And instead, what we had was a postponement request by the district. And it's really upsetting, especially to our members that are on the bargaining team who feel so deeply connected to this issue. It's been really frustrating, because we know that these are common sense proposals. We're not asking for something that is extremely expensive. We're not asking for something that is completely outrageous. We're asking for class size caps when doing inclusion. We're asking for a model on co-teaching that folks can learn about and discover, so we have something to work off of as a school, as a community, right? Those are not far-fetched ideas. And we're working on other things that I mentioned earlier. There's like 6 pillars that we're holding really strong on, planning time being one of them. So what this does is, it's very upsetting, like I said, to hear that the very division of special ed, who is supposed to be championing and leading to protect the rights and to ensure that our students are receiving the education that they deserve, right? Their free and appropriate public education. It's upsetting that they are so delayed, or maybe just dragging their feet, or maybe just unwilling to move on this issue. Again, common sense issues that would actually help elevate inclusion and make sure that it succeeds, right? So what this means, and I'll mention this in next steps because I do want to get to our guests. What this means is either we have a victory soon, from the district. We hope we are meeting next week, so you'll see us again. We are meeting next week to bargain on this. We are expecting a counter from the district. And so either the next time we speak, we will be discussing victories and what this means, or we're going to start talking about organizing and reaching out to parents and community about this issue. So that being said, I do want to introduce our two members here. We have, to my right is Deborah Dugal, and she is an elementary teacher at Blythe Elementary School. And then we have Jessica Kotchek, who is a high school teacher at UCLA Community School. And just so you know, Jessica is with us at the bargaining table, and Deborah is going to join us at our next session. And I want them to explain to you guys and just, you know, give you a little bit more about what inclusion looks like at their school. So, Jess, I'll start with you just really quickly, because I know that you've been doing this for a number of years. What is inclusion for the folks that have never heard of this before?
Okay, so so I work at UCLA Community School now. It's my 7th year there. But before that, I actually did inclusion as well at Academic Leadership Community, which is at the Miguel Contreras Learning Complex, just to give them a shout out as well, because they're doing it too. And in both cases, it has been very teacher-led. So we haven't been receiving district support, and that has been an ongoing struggle to maintain our staffing. But what it is making sure, so all students with mild to moderate disabilities are included in the general education classrooms for all their core classes. And we co-plan, co-teach. The way we're doing it now at my school is by department, but you can do it by grade level, you can do it whatever makes sense. We co-plan with the general education teachers. We plan accommodations, we plan instructional strategies, we co-teach, co-assess as well. And some students who need it also receive learning labs or extra support classes where they can get additional literacy or math support and extra time for assignments, and that could be an elective. And this includes all the students that were segregated in special day classes.
Yeah. And it's so heartbreaking, I know as special education teachers, like to hear the word segregated, because a lot of times, I know in my experience, it's been having to help my students overcome the stigma, and sometimes even families. That has been the most challenging part of like reaching a child, right? So I mean, that word segregation, right, has such a strong connotation with educators and special ed. So, Deborah, did you want to add anything else to what is inclusion?
I just think that inclusion is basically acceptance. It's having the commitment to our students to build those relationship peers and actually give them the opportunity to learn in a typically developing classroom.
And I'm taking notes here because, I mean, I haven't done one of these in a while. And also because this is like super important. So, you know, and I think like the messaging to our members and to our family, and especially ladies, when we hit the bargaining table next week, like that's going to be the message that we've been conveying for so long. And, you know, even at the bargaining table, it's been agreed that our proposal, take a look at it at utla.net, is very student-centered. And so, you know, makes sense that we get an agreement soon, but if not, the fight is upon us. So then can you, I mean, I asked you guys what inclusion was, but you use these words, right? Like segregation, acceptance, commitment, like that's why it's important, right? But can you tell me, like, Deborah, what does it look like at Blythe Elementary for someone who is just starting off? Because there's been an increase from 50 schools to 81 schools. So those schools, the 31 that are in their development stage, tell us a little bit, what does it look like at Blythe Elementary?
Well, at Blythe, we are pretty much fully included, but getting there was not easy. It took a lot of planning. It took a lot of co-teaching. It took a lot of co-planning. It was an everyday meet-up. And we started this because the district wanted at one point for us to mainstream science and social sciences and history in the afternoons.
Okay.
And I saw my students flourish. They were talking more, they were raising their hands more, they were making more friends. And so the next year we said, well, what if we included math? And so what we did was we assessed, which we do with all of our students.
Right.
We assessed them at the beginning of the year, and we grouped them not according to what grade they were in, but to their ability levels. And this allowed us to see our students, not only our gen ed students, score in the areas that they weren't afraid to be wrong, basically. Right. And so we grouped our students in a low group, a medium group, enrichment group. And this allowed all students to be put together, whether they scored in middle or low. And so you had my special ed students along with gen ed students in the low group. You had special ed and gen ed in a middle group, which was grade level. And we had sped and gen ed students in our enrichment group. But it allowed them to feel more comfortable. It gave them the opportunity to raise their hands and ask questions and not feel targeted. It allowed them, it was in essence acceptance. And so, and that's why I say it's a commitment to our students in acceptance, because at the school now, when we did that, we saw our scores go up. Not only with our SPED students, but with our general ed students. Yeah. And, it gave them the opportunity. We saw relationships get built. And not only that, but not only in the classroom, that transferred onto the playground. And it transferred in them helping each other in the classroom. Yeah. When someone didn't understand, you'd see another lean over and start talking to them. And so it was just so motivating that we said, well, if this works with math and history and science, well, why can't it work with everything else? Yeah. And so the year after, we tried it with everything else, and it worked so well that we said, let's do it again. And so we've been doing this inclusion with our students every year since.
And how many years has that been?
We have been doing it for 5 years now.
So ideally, a child who started off, who's now in 5th grade, has been in inclusive practices all along. I mean, that's...
We've tried, so we haven't gone down.
Got it.
We've slowly started going down.
Yeah.
So we've included 4th grade and 3rd grade. And so they're starting now where we were 5 years ago.
Got it.
With just the afternoons.
That makes a lot of
sense. And
sense.
so we're hoping that at some point in the next 3-4 years that our whole school will have that inclusion going. Yes.
Yeah. So I love that you were able to scaffold it, right? As needed. Yeah.
Yes.
And just so you're in high school, and so what does that, or in your classroom, give us some experiences of inclusion in your school, at your in your own classroom. What does that look like?
So actually, Deborah and I were talking earlier, and as she was telling her story, I was saying it echoes so much to my experience, because I started at UCLA Community School there were SDC classes still, and we were transitioning out of them. So my first year, students were segregated, and we were able to see the transformation, and it was incredible. There were students who had major discipline issues. Teachers, the special education teachers, were very unhappy and stressed out, dealing with a lot of classroom management issues. And there was some concern among the general education teachers that maybe there's going to be too many problems, maybe this isn't going to work. But what ended up happening was, once we included the students, they rose to the occasion. And all of the behavior issues went away, discipline referrals decreased dramatically, and we surveyed students who started in SDC classes and graduated in a fully inclusive program by the time they graduated. And I mean, their responses were the most telling thing of all. Just how much better it was for them, how they were just like everybody else. They were included in the social fabric of the entire school community. So, they had prom dates that were general ed kids. They played on the sports teams when before they didn't want to, because they felt like they didn't. These were some of the powerful experiences, but they're in the classroom too, and I did want to emphasize that they're academic confidence, their motivation increased. So like at our school, we do interdisciplinary social action projects.
Okay.
So that would include science, history, and now we're trying to incorporate English as well. And the students, they're in groups, they're working together, they have to interact with the community, they investigate the social problem, they speak in multiple languages.
Fantastic.
And they're a part of it. They're the ones that are going out into the community to do their interviews. And so I just think it's incredible for them academically, socially, in terms of their growth as human beings. And the other thing I'll say is that general ed teachers who maybe at first were like, okay, philosophically I'm down with this, but it has to be done right, or I don't want my whole class to be disrupted. Exactly. They embraced it because they saw how powerful it was and how it could work. And so now, of course, we're still always trying to improve our instruction and our collaboration, but now it's all about that. What does that problem-solving process look like? How do we make sure? But there's no more, the resistance is gone because people had to see it to realize that this is the right thing to do.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so, again, sorry, I'm taking notes, but I will say that in the process of meeting with some of these schools that are doing inclusion over the last few months, I've been brought to tears, but if you know me, you know that's easily done. But I comment just on like being part of the social fabric, like part of being a special education teacher and general ed teachers, you know this because you've worked alongside with us on so many of these issues, is being an advocate on behalf of our students, right? Absolutely. On behalf of the community. So giving our students, like saying the world is yours, you're accepted, you are part of this, and you're going to go and advocate for others, right, to make sure that we're constantly challenging society on this, right? It's like, that is super exciting, and which is why, like, there's no better time than now to really lead on this. And I think about, like, our parents who hesitate, right, because of the stigma of special education, like knowing that my child is still going to be with their general ed peers. I know as an elementary teacher, that was one of the biggest concern. Like, well, I don't want to pull them out of their setting, right? Mm-hmm. But like now being able to group them where they'll succeed. And from what we spoke over the weekend, Deborah, but you said like these groupings are fluid. So if I'm actually succeeding in group A.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So my students, if they have the opportunity to move, so they could start in the very bottom, we categorize them as well below benchmark. But if they're grasping the subject in the curriculum and they're making progress and you see them just adapting and making that progress, why not push that student further? And so we have it where our students can actually move as they progress. And that goes for if they scored enrichment. Could be a fluke, we don't know, but if they're in that enrichment group and we see them struggling, we see them having a hard time, they're really trying, but they're just not getting it. They have that opportunity to just go down where it's more scaffold, it's more differentiated to the curriculum and their ability levels. Right. So they have that opportunity to continuously move throughout the year.
And that's one of the things that we keep hearing, especially in elementary. Just feel free to like chime in, but like in elementary, we always are dealing with, having that wide variety of students, but not having the time to like, how do I address these needs of my students here when I have such a diverse student need across the level, right? Across my classroom. So having this type of grouping makes a lot of sense. And these two, by the way, are just examples of what could be. And so just so you guys know, when we initially, and Jess, you might remember this, when we initially met with the district, the word they kept using was organic. We want this to happen organically at the school sites. And that was troubling for many reasons. But one, it's because there just wasn't anything in writing that would actually say, you need to involve parents. You need to have a school-wide vision and planning and collaboration effort to make sure that we listen to our general ed teachers, we listen to our special ed teachers, and we come up what best works for our community and our students, because nobody knows that a little bit better, right?
Yes.
So just really quickly, if you can tell us, and Deborah, like you're gonna be on there next week, tell us a little bit about the experience in bargaining, because you weren't on the, I was on the bargaining team leading up to the strike for the last 2 years, and I hooked you on to bring.
Yeah.
So
This
tell
has
us.
been my very first experience, and it's been kind of enlightening, I guess. I mean, I did not have high expectations, but I've still been very disappointed at the pace of how things have gone, because the district is saying that, philosophically we're on the same page, yet they're not making any effort to give us any sort of reasonable proposal. And just to speak to one particular issue, which is embedded collaboration time within the contractual workday, it is absolutely essential. I know at the elementary level, you don't even get a conference period.
We don't.
No.
We do get a conference period, but we also have to write and hold IEPs, and so we absolutely need a specific time within the regular schedule for co-planning.
Yeah.
Right. So at the high school level, no student who has dyslexia or has some sort of learning disability who struggles should have to be segregated because they're reading below grade level, right?
Right.
But if we want that student to be successful in the general education classroom, we need to co-plan and figure out how are we making this accessible?
Absolutely.
What is the reading? How are we going to annotate it? How are we going to make sure that students are reading this out loud in small groups and discussing it? How are we going to make sure that the material is accessible, that the student can engage in the material? Well, we know how. We need time. We need time so that the experts in special education and the experts in general education can meet and share and figure it out and plan their lessons together. And it's incredibly successful if you have that time. And if you don't have that time, as a special educator, you become a glorified teacher's assistant.
Yeah, we don't.
And you're not able to meet the needs of the students, and that makes and then everyone suffers.
Yeah.
Because the general education students absolutely benefit from the instructional support that the special education teachers provide. So the district nods their head in the bargaining sessions that this is important, and yet they're not willing to put it in writing.
Yeah.
They're not willing to fund whatever funding would be necessary, which isn't even much, in order to make it possible for this co-planning to happen.
Yeah.
And this is part of our job. It should happen during our workday.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just to piggyback what Jess said, as elementary teachers, we don't get that time to sit down and actually co-plan. And so my colleagues and I, who are amazing, we use the little bit of time here and there to say, we'll use in between passing time to say, hey, do you have any idea they're not getting this? What else can I do?
Yeah.
Or, hey, do you think this person needs to move down a second because they're not kind of getting this part of the subject? Or, what can we do today? Or, hey, are you using technology? Maybe I'll try this way. We are planning and meeting every second and minute of the day, because that's what inclusion is. It is collaborating all the time, all day with each other to make this work. If we want our students to be successful, like Jess said, we've got to have that time.
Yeah, and it's also building this team mentality, right? That
Absolutely.
and because so many brand new teachers enter as special ed teachers, knowing that we have this collaboration, right, built into my school, I can really see how important and how stronger I would be as a new teacher if I had this time within the day or within, and that looks, again, differently. Berendel Middle School, they have, minimal funding that they're able to meet right before school starts, during the winter break and during spring break. And I'm not saying that that's the ideal situation, but people have said look, I'm gonna meet, and we're gonna plan, and we're gonna get, you know, a little bit of money for stuff that we're already doing. But it's not enough, right? You need to
No.
do it on a daily basis. So thank you, ladies. You guys are phenomenal, and I'm just super excited about what this means for our students and our profession, what it means for our school sites and our community. But I do want to just give you guys a little bit of information on next steps. So as you know, in January, we won language in Article 22. Article 22 is a new special ed language. And I'm super excited, and we should be super proud of the gains that we made in Article 22, because now, because it's a standalone article, special ed issues are going to now be able to be reopened, either when we go into full bargaining or as reopener bargaining. And so, whereas before, we would have to wait for the special ed issue to come up within the article that we chose to open on, right? So now, like, the fact that we have it's so powerful to have an actual article, right?
Yes.
And again, if you want to see what it looks like in the contract enforcement, it's on UTLA.net. But prior to that, special ed hadn't been negotiated for 38 years, which tells us where the mentality of this district and, you know, was on special ed. And, you know, truth be told, it's a very scary topic, right? I mean, it is very scary to take on such a complex and nuanced but important issue, right? And so, so all my special ed teachers and all my general ed teachers and all the parents and all the students who were out there with us in January, I just want to thank you for sticking with us and believing that this was important enough to like really elevate as one of the platforms that we fought for in January. So thank you.
Yes.
And that being said, in case you haven't heard, your board of directors over the summer voted to take on special ed as a reopener in January of 2020. So yeah, it's very exciting. So in a year we have started to chisel away at the archaic, holding us back for what was holding us back for 38 years. So January 2020, one of the reopeners will be special education. We will be probably tackling inclusion because chances are we won't get everything that we want, right? On the first try, that never works, even though we tried. And then also really strengthening Article 22. So I'm very excited about that. And our next steps are 10/17, October 17th, we're going to have a release date for all 81 schools. So you'll be receiving an email very shortly in the next, probably in the next few days or so, letting you know, like, hey, you're an inclusion site. The district has given us the list of 81 schools. Your school is one of them. If you don't receive it as chapter chairs, then you are not one of the 81 sites. But you would know if you're one of the 81 sites, by the way. And what we're asking is if our chapter chair feels comfortable enough in discussing the inclusion or knows enough about the inclusion process, we want the chapter chair to come on October 17th. But if you're the chapter chair and you feel, Deborah's not the chapter chair, well, actually you are, but Deborah's not the chapter chair, but she is much more versed or much more in this than I am, I recommend that Deborah be the representative for Blythe Elementary, right? So Jess, are you the chapter chair at your school?
I'm not.
Okay, so then this example works better. Then the chapter chair at UCLA Community School will say, you know what, I think Jess would be the better representative because we want to have 81 representatives, one from each school site, where either we are reviewing our victories, right, or we are organizing the fight. Because this fight is going to be long, because it's going to lead us into January, but this fight is going to be righteous. So I'm super excited about the opportunities. I want to thank Jessica and Deborah for coming down and really helping illuminate this issue. And I want to thank all of our viewers who are leading and out there being practitioners and really advocating for our students. Thank you so much. We will see you next time. Thanks, guys.